Welcome to the Leading Hope Podcast with Kevin Jack. Your influence will lead people somewhere, lead them towards hope. Everyone has 20 minutes to learn to become a better leader. Make it count.
Welcome to Leading Hope with Kevin Jack. I'm your host, VJ Williams, here with my friend and pastor, Kevin Jack. Thank you for joining us and taking time out of your day to become a better leader. We release a new episode every Wednesday, so we'd love for you to share on social media and bring others along with us on this journey of becoming a better leader. Visit leadinghope.online to get updates and find out more about the Leading Hope community. If you're new to the podcast or haven't yet subscribed, it would mean the world to us if you did that right now. Also, post about it, rate, and review. You will not believe how that helps get this podcast in the hands of so many more leaders like you. Today, we are starting episode 35 in our Leadership Fundamentals series. It is culture. Everyone loves culture. And Kevin, you can't wait to talk about culture, and I can't wait to hear it.
Everyone loves culture.
Everyone.
So this is what we're going to do today. As we're in our Leadership Fundamentals series, a crash course in the basics of leadership. Culture is one of the most misunderstood and overcomplicated topics there are in leadership.
I'm intrigued.
And so I want you to know, just kind of on the front end, I've got a lot of content for this. It's not a big long list, so I don't want you. This is like a larger discussion to help you get a grasp of it. And so rather than doing our typical format of I go for 10 or 12 minutes in content and then VJ and I have a conversation back and forth, is I'm giving VJ full permission to interrupt me at any point in time if he feels like I need to slow down.
Hey, can you...
No, not there.
Okay.
Or need to clarify something.
Perfect.
Or anything like that. Okay, so I want to talk about culture, and I want to make it less confusing. I want to make it more clear for you, and I want you to understand how important it is. And just on the front end, and we've got this in the show notes, two great books on culture. One of them is by Edgar Sheen, and it's titled Organizational Culture and Leadership. Just as a heads up, it's a textbook. Okay, so that's what you'll be getting into, but it's brilliant and fascinating. And then another one that's an easier read is a book by Ben Horowitz titled What You Do Is Who You Are. But these are just, in the books that I've read on culture, those are two that stand out. So let's define culture. Culture, for all the definitions that are there for leadership purposes, this is as simple as I can make it. Maybe someone else can make it simpler who's a lot smarter than I am, but this is as simple as I can make it. Culture is what is normalized in a group. That is it. Culture is what is normalized in a group. And so when you talk about that, good or bad, you'll hear people talk about we have a violence culture, and they'll give all these different things. Video games and movies and all these others have led to a violence culture. They're saying violence has been normalized. An oppression culture, a benevolent culture, a mentoring culture. All they're saying there is that this is what has been normalized. This is the group norm. Now, all of these things, like all of these different descriptions of culture, have different pieces pushing towards it. So let's talk about Walmart and Target.
Ooh.
Walmart and Target have very different cultures. Everyone knows that. And you may be here, you'd be like, I would never walk in there. Or I'm wearing my pajama pants there. And you know where there is if you're wearing your pajama pants. Like, they have different cultures. They have different things that are normalized. And you would say, so what is that? Well, it's 1,000 things. It's the products they offer. It's the prices they put it at. It's the number of people at checkout to reduce costs. It's the lighting. It's the music. Like, it's how crowded the aisles are. There's 1,000 things they're doing, but there's pieces of their culture that have become normalized. And I found the easiest way to understand culture is by looking at it as a family dynamic. So when you think of family dynamic is the best way to understand culture. And say it like this: for your family, when someone comes in from the outside, what would they find unusual? What would be assumed by your family that they would know? If they did differently, you go, well, why do they do it that way? So when you're talking about that, what would someone from the outside find unusual? What would your family assume from the other person? You're talking about what's normalized. So let me give you an example. When my wife and I were dating, and we were together, and it was the holidays, and it was Thanksgiving, and I was over at her family, and her whole extended family came. And my family, what's normalized is we're pretty loose. Like, my family's pretty casual. And I was used to extended holidays, stuff like that. People just did whatever they wanted. We usually stayed back with our family for a couple days. So, like, you made it your home.
Yeah.
So this is like my first or second Thanksgiving with Bethany's family. We ate. No one's doing anything. We're just hanging around. And I was tired. So I laid down and I took a nap. And in my family, that was perfectly acceptable. Yeah. And I woke up and I sat back down by Bethany and she goes, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I was tired." She goes, "You just took a nap in the middle of the floor." Like, I just assumed that was okay.
Yeah.
For their family, it was not for me to do that, especially when, like, no one was staying the night. No one was hanging out. No one was there for several days. And so, like, that was a moment of just going, oh, there's different things that are normalized within these cultures. So when you're thinking culture, you're thinking what is normalized within this group. Now, 3 truths of culture, so you can see the significance of that. Creating what is normal has the greatest impact on your organization's future. Creating what is normal, crafting, being deliberate about designing what is normalized for your family has the greatest impact on your family's future. If you want your family to be healthy, do you snack every night at 10 p.m.? Because 10 p.m. snacks get normalized pretty quickly. And then that carries over into adulthood. Like, my uncle, this is one of the most brilliant things that I've ever seen anyone do. And it was awful in the moment. We went and stayed at his house when I was a teenager. It is August. And I walked into the house and it was like, it was hot. Like, I walked in that house and I was sweating. And I was like, what are you doing? And he goes, "I keep my house at 78. I was like, 78? Like, like, I live at 70 year round. That's what I wanted at. And he goes, "I want to be outside. I want my family to be outside. So I create an environment in which I want them to be outside." He's normalizing outdoor activity.
Yeah.
Now, he's got some mechanisms that he's doing it, but there's ways that you can create it. So creating what is normal has the greatest impact on your future. Second truth of culture. Creating what is normal is massively complicated. Like, it's incredibly complicated. There is no right way to create culture. There are ineffective ways to create culture. There are ways that don't work, but there is no one right way. So creating what is normal is complicated. And then the third truth for us for now for culture is that culture requires constant attention. Just because it's normalized now doesn't mean it'll stay forever.
Yeah.
And so even as you're setting normals, man, just because it's normal now doesn't mean it's not going to adapt and change over time.
There's a couple things in there. I love that because that's, like you said, it's really hard to wrap your mind around culture.
Exactly.
Because it's so unique and distinct to itself.
Yeah.
I just blew up my own mind. But you know what I mean? Like, that's the difficulty of trying to figure out culture. For you, what is it when you're trying to normalize your a vision, or normalize the meeting space, or normalize your leadership abilities within the environment in which you seek to lead? What are you trying to actually normalize to make it a new culture?
So, I mean, I think that comes into defining what you want your intended culture to be and moving through it. Another way to look at it is just say, hey, it's what's normalized. It's also how it feels.
Yeah.
Like, culture has an emotional element to it. It's not just a logical thing. One of the fascinating things that different businesses will do to solidify their culture is they understand that memory's strongest tie is to scent, like smell.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, is tied to emotion. And so they'll put that in there. But that's a way of crafting that. So let me get into on that question, which I think is great. I want to talk about the key levers to creating culture. And so if you think of it like a factory and you go, hey, if culture was a product, if I want this product to come out, these are the levers I need to turn to change what the product is. And so, again, as we're thinking through this, think through family dynamic. That is the easiest way. Whether you work at a church or a business or anywhere else or a nonprofit, I wholeheartedly believe family dynamic is the easiest way to understand creating what is normalized. And so 3 key levers to creating culture. The first one is your values. Your values. Your written, described, and visualized values. Your values are the greatest lever you have to creating culture. Now, here's the important thing. Values are not your culture. They are an attempt to describe your culture. Having values doesn't mean this is your culture. But having written values that are visual is the greatest lever you have towards creating culture because it states clearly what you want to be normalized. And some people think the work of culture is crafting values. That's the work of defining the culture and then leading towards it. But when you reward around it, when you discipline around it, when you hire around it, 1,000 other things within there, that is the greatest tool you have in there. So think through family dynamic. Because I don't know many families that have values. I don't know many families that have these are our values. Yeah. Families who you walk in the door. Man, if our homes looked like our churches, here's our mission statement, here's our values, and here's the address of our intended destination. No, it doesn't work. But your family has values. And think back through it like this. If you're older, if you're removed from your house, what were your family's repeated phrases? What did you hear over and over and over again? Yeah. What were those sticky statements? In my family, it was don't blame, take responsibility. Don't blame, take responsibility. I get in a fight with my sisters. I'd hit them and I go, well, they did this. Don't blame, take responsibility for what you did.
Yeah. I think mine was go to your room.
Go to your room.
That was a culture piece. Go to your room.
Well, so.
Or bend over.
We talk about it, the hilarity of just go to your room.
Yeah.
Well, what that states within there is if you make a mess, you will get out of my sight.
Yes.
That's a value. Yeah. That's what's within there.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
So what you're doing organizationally is the same thing as having repeated phrases. For our team, let's say our church as a whole, we have values in our church. We talk about we move forward.
Yes.
We move forward. We talk about everyone belongs. We believe everyone matters. We believe Jesus is the center of everything we do.
Absolutely.
And then we have values specific to our team. For our larger Hope team and everyone there, this is how we operate. One of them is the best idea wins. Mm-hmm. Now, what the culture is we value inclusion, participation, we value teams, but then the way we're trying to describe it is we're saying the best idea wins. No matter what the position, the best idea wins at the end of the day. Now, again, that value is not the culture. That value is a lever that we're pulling, attempting to create the culture at the end of the day.
Yeah, the best idea wins because you have decided that before you even get to the idea, there would be many to choose from.
Yes. Yeah, that's good. So that's the first lever on creating culture. And again, just as a reminder, why we're going through this, creating what is normalized has the greatest impact on your future, and it's also complicated. Yeah. And so the first lever is values. I just want to note here, there are 1,000 levers you can pull. These, I believe, are the 3 that are the most impactful. These are the 3 that have the greatest leverage. So first lever, value. The second lever for crafting culture and creating it is leadership. Leadership. And this is 1,000 different things, but let's talk about it clearly. It is who you pick to be in leadership, and it is the behavior of those leaders says more about your culture than anything else. If we would talk about the value of best idea wins, if we state as a value the best idea wins, but our leaders never listen to outside opinions, that is not a value. That is not our culture.
Yes.
And so the selection of leaders and the behavior of those leaders will do more to influence your culture than almost anything else. Now, If you don't have the value stated, you don't know what culture you're leaning towards as clearly. As a note, when you hire or promote from within, it solidifies the culture. When you hire or promote from outside, it changes the culture.
Yeah.
And I don't say that as a bad thing. Like, use that wisely. If you love your culture, hire or promote internally, and everyone will be proud of who you are. If you need to change the culture, and one of the most famous statements, Andy Grove said this when he was the CEO of Intel. He said he realized that if things kept going down that path, the board was going to fire him as CEO. And he said, what's to stop us from walking out of this room and walking right back in and doing exactly what our successor would do?
Yep.
Now, what he's saying the culture needs to change, but I'm going to be a completely different person in order to do that. But within that solidifies the point. When you want to solidify the culture, hire or promote from within. When you want to change it, hire or promote from outside. Family model. What did your parents model? Like, you talk about, man, what gets solidified in a culture? Everybody contributes to that, but the actions of the parents do far more to solidify a family's culture than anything else. Same is true within organizations. Leadership matters. And then the third level is attention. Attention. And attention comes in so many different forms. What is celebrated? Like, what do you reward? What do you call someone up on the stage or shoot out an email? And if you're smart, you're not just highlighting an individual, you're highlighting a specific behavior that solidifies the culture. So what's celebrated? What gets corrected? What is overlooked? What is a priority? What can't get on the schedule at all? Like, if you want to say, like, hey, our culture, what are people just getting away with? And you go, are you okay with that? Well, if it's not impactful to our culture, then fine. But what are people getting away with that may erode the culture? A family dynamic. What could you get away with? What would you be punished for? And what were you celebrated for? Here is a parents. This is a like a warning signal for family culture. If you only celebrate your kids when they accomplish something, academically or athletically, you have set off a massively dangerous family culture because you're teaching them only achievement matters. If you want healthy adults that you are raising in the future, celebrate character, celebrate kindness, make that the thing that you value, and make that the thing that you correct more than anything else.
So important to remember that. That's something that I have learned over the years, that it's so important that I don't need the accomplishment to be the key to the celebration. That can be part of it. That's nothing wrong with doing that as part of it, but not the main focus of that. I mean, it's so important. Good point.
Yeah, if your kid has A's, oh my goodness,
yeah,
take them. I don't care if they're a senior in high school. Take them to Chuck E. Cheese. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
But if that's the only thing that gets celebrated, that's concerning. Like, that's not what you want. And so I know this whole conversation can be really confusing. And we could spend, oh my goodness, we could spend the rest of the year talking about culture.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the reality. It is that complex and it is that important. But I want to make it as simple as we possibly can. Culture is what is normalized. Culture is just what regularly happens. If you're a boss and you step out, what keeps going? What doesn't change? That's your culture. And the ways to influence your culture, the key levers, are your values, your leaders, and what you give attention to, good or bad.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The one other thing that I would say, and I'll just say this from my perspective, is to be able to watch. You value leadership within our environment, and it's changed our culture because of it.
Yeah.
And our culture has become a culture that people want to lead first, not as a secondary position. It's something that they want to start with, not end with. And the cool thing is I could listen to you talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. And I think culture is set by example so much more than just talking about it. Talking about it's great, and it
Yeah.
needs to be done. But man, so many times I see you living it out, and so it's not so much you saying, it's you doing it and watching that, and I can see by the example, the culture, almost just, it's something felt.
Yeah.
And something seen. So, man, that has been it's been important on my life to be able to be part of watching you be an example of what leadership culture looks like. So, man, thank you for doing that.
Well, let's mention this. This podcast is a symbol within our church of the value of leadership. Of saying, hey, when we first talked about doing this, it was primarily for the important. We are grateful for everyone who listens.
Absolutely.
But our first desire was to say, we have campuses that are disconnected from us geographically that we can't personally develop on a day-to-day basis. And so we want to make sure we're making a deposit in their lives, that they're growing better and that they have an edge as a leader. Yep. And so when we talk about the lever of attention through this podcast communicates leadership matters, leaders matter. We want you to lead and continue to get better. Because VJ, everyone has 20 minutes to get better as a leader.
That's it. And that's the culture, man. That's fantastic. I would normally ask you where you want to leave this, but I think you just did it.
That was it.
I think you just did it. So, man, that is fantastic. I hope this was helpful to you guys. It certainly was for me. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're new to the podcast or haven't subscribed yet, it would mean the world to us if you did that right now. Also post about it and rate and review, or both. Won't believe how it continues to get in the hands of those who are just like you, people who want to be great leaders. We want to be great leaders, and it's why we do this. So continue doing that for us. We'd love to hear your stories of how the podcast is working in your life and business. If you have a story, visit leadinghope.online and send that to us. We want to hear from you. And just like Kevin said, everyone has 20 minutes to become a better leader. Make it count.